Welcome to the New Mom Talk podcast, your go-to podcast for evidence-based answers to your burning questions about parenting. Join us as we dive into commonly Googled topics and hear from experts and real moms. Let's navigate parenthood together, one question at a time. Hi, everyone. I'm so excited for today's episode. We are going to talk about parental anxiety, what that is, how to manage it, how to tell if you have it, which I feel like maybe all parents have it. But today we have Dr. Rebekah Diamond to give us all the details on this. So I'm going to start off with handing it over to you. If you can just tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, this is such an important big topic. As many of you know, the Surgeon General recently came out about how parental anxiety is just at an all-time high, how parents are struggling more than ever. And this is something that I am seeing absolutely, and it's kind of what informs everything I do. So a bit about me. I'm a pediatrician, and I am the author of 2 books, Parent Like a Pediatrician and Eat, Sleep, Tantrum, Repeat. And the reason I wrote these 2 books is really related to my own parental anxiety. You know, when my oldest was born, I have 2 daughters now, and when my oldest was born, I was so overwhelmed. I felt like there was no information out there that made things easier. I felt like everything was making things more stressful, even the good information, even the higher quality advice. And I felt like it was impossible to meet all these standards being set. So I ended up spending the next few years combing through research and my own practice and learning my own parenting lessons to create the content that I create, which is both online on Instagram at Parent Like a Pediatrician and also in my books, because they're really, parenting is hard and today's society really doesn't support parents. But a lot of what makes parenting so stressful really is unnecessary. It's just the sheer amount of noise out there, the amount of products and services being sold, the amount of prescriptive advice that's being given. It's really just a lot of harmful noise. And I really think once parents learn how to sift through that and learn how to trust their inner voice and use good information to make decisions, then there's just this moment of like, oh, okay, this is hard, but it's not impossible, So that's my whole background with this very important topic.
Do you see me agreeing with all of this? Because I feel like it's a blessing in disguise. There's a lot more out there, a lot more information, but it's almost like too much information and contradicting information. And here's what you need to do. And even though the internet has all of these great things, it has kind of made parenting a lot more difficult. And there's just so much pressure on us. So
yeah, absolutely.
That said, let's start off with the basics. What exactly is parental anxiety and how is that different from just general anxiety?
Yeah, that's a great question. So obviously, if you're an anxious person like I am, you're more likely to be anxious about your parenting. But I think when we talk about, so they're related, obviously it's a type of anxiety, but I think when we talk specifically about parental anxiety, it's that excessive worry and nervousness and angst and stress around parenting decisions. And you can have people who aren't even that anxious per se, but when it comes to parenting, have had their confidence so much eroded and have had so much pressure put on them that they are really operating under a state of anxiety about relatively simple decisions. I know I fall into that category, or used to at least, for a lot of the day-to-day decisions, oh, what should I feed my kid? Oh, how do I talk to my kid like this? What's the parenting script of the day? What's the this? What's the that? And I think that level of the excessive specific anxiety around parenting, it's not that it's new, but it's just a lot more prevalent and a lot more intense these days.
So with all of that, what are some early signs or symptoms that essentially tell us that parents might be struggling with anxiety? Especially if you're somebody that's not an anxious person or doesn't have anxiety as, part of your health history.
Yeah. It's almost like the anxious amongst us know what to look for, so have a little bit of an advantage when it comes to this, even though we have a lot of anxiety. But even people who aren't anxious, if you find yourself sort of excessively doubting your choices or excessively worrying or agonizing over the decisions you're making for your kids, or if you find yourself having a lot of stress around things that might happen to your kids. Like maybe you're not that worried and anxious in your life, but you're really worried about how your kid's sleeping, or if your kid's getting enough sleep, or if they're sleeping safely. These can all be signs that maybe you have specific anxiety related to parenting. And I think that's a great opportunity to kind of dive in and see if there's ways that you can mitigate that.
Gosh, I feel like that's every parent starting out, right? Is my child turning at the right age? Is my child, should they be sitting up? Like, are they eating enough?
Right.
First time parenting.
And I think that's exactly right. And so when I was kind of diving into parenting, I said, okay, well, maybe this is just normal, right? Maybe everyone just doesn't know what they're doing. Like they say, there's no book for parenting, they don't come with instructions. Everyone's nervous. And I think there is that normal nervousness, but when you find that it's interfering with your ability to feel confident, to feel joyful, to feel like your parenting is really something that is yours and that you have ownership of, then I think that's when we tip over into, okay, this is really parental anxiety at this point.
Well, then my next question. So, how can this parental anxiety really affect both the parent-child relationship and that family dynamic? Because it's hard to say, kind of like how we were talking about when you first become a parent, you're constantly trying to figure out, is my kid on track? Is he or she reaching all of the milestones? And then if not, then you become really kind of like anxious that maybe you're not doing enough. And you feel that way as a parent anyway. You're not doing enough. You're not doing the black and white pictures. You're not doing enough tummy time. Whatever it is, you always feel like you're not doing enough.
Introducing the Mama Making Podcast, your go-to space for honest and empowering conversations about motherhood, pregnancy, and everything in between. Hosted by Jessica, a passionate mom navigating her own journey through motherhood, we deep dive into the highs and lows we all face as moms. Each Tuesday, tune in for candid chats with experts and moms, sharing practical parenting tips, new mom advice, and real-life stories that help you thrive. Whether you're expecting, dealing with postpartum challenges, or balancing life as a working mom, this podcast offers the community and support you need. Join us for discussions on self-care, mental health after childbirth, and the beautiful mess that is modern motherhood.
Well, I think a lot of that, it's hard because you're always going to want to do more and be more as a loving parent. I understand that urge, but a lot of it comes from these kind of arbitrary and unrealistic expectations that you're getting. So, like I said, or like you mentioned, parents are getting a lot of conflicting advice, just a lot of it. And some of it is good guidance, some of it is not. But at the end of the day, if you're getting expectations that you can't meet for whatever reason, you're going to feel unnecessarily bad. And so I think the way I like to tell parents how to approach this is, yes, it's important to manage your own anxiety and sort of deal with it as it comes along. But one way to prevent it is to really be thoughtful about what information you're taking in. And so if you can find a way to have just a few sources of information, a few reputable guides, understand that most of what you're hearing is opinion, that not all opinion is created equal, and that really the non-negotiables, the basics of what you have to do for your kid aren't that many. There's things like giving them a safe home, giving them a variety of foods, letting them sleep when they're tired, giving them life-saving medicines and vaccines, giving them food and water and, education. Those are kind of the non-negotiables. Beyond that, there's a lot of room for you to find your style. And so if you're finding advice or information that's making you feel like your style is wrong or that you're not doing enough, chances are that's not good information. It's not the right information for you. So, I think the key is it's hard. It's hard even for me in this age of social media. You're scrolling and you get a million ads and a million posts and you're like, oh my God, I thought I did bedtime right, but apparently I'm wrong. And apparently everything is wrong. It's really hard to tune that out. But the moment that we can start to do that, our own voice starts to creep in. And then we take whatever good information is helpful and we adapt it to ourselves. And I think that's really the key.
That is such a good takeaway, because I think, just to add on to that, every child is different. And I mean, part of the reason why I started this podcast is just because there's conflicting information everywhere. And I just wanted that evidence-based information. Give me what the science says, give me what the studies say, so that I can then make the best decision for my family. But when you're constantly getting fed all of the newest and latest, and on top of that, products to buy, services to buy, it's a lot. It is too much. It's so overwhelming.
Yeah. And it's not necessary. Not only is it sometimes harmful and not helpful, but at the very best, it's just extra, right? You probably would have come up with a good solution on your own 9 times out of 10. It's good to get advice and to get guidance. But the way that we as parents are doubting really simple decisions and really making the basics complicated, a lot of that is unnecessary. Deciding how many ounces of milk does my child need a day? The answer might be enough that they aren't thirsty and are growing, right? But if you go online, there are people who are giving you such rigid rules that you may start to question kind of basic intuitive decisions. And once you do that, it's impossible not to feel just a lack of confidence and a lack of empowerment. So I've always thought the key to this is really getting better about the quality and quantity of information that we're getting. So I appreciate your sentiment and your goal, which is, well, we just need better, more selected, more curated, higher quality information for parents so that they can make the decisions that work for them. Like you said, every family is different.
Yeah. And, I feel like you've already kind of given some really great tips and strategies for parents to manage their anxiety. Do you have any other ideas or techniques that parents can use to be able to manage this anxiety or pressure that they're feeling on a daily basis?
Yeah, a lot of it I need to practice what I preach, but I would say if you can go off social media for even just a few days and notice your heart rate drop a little bit and you feel a little more confident, I think that's a great start to really start that process of filtering out the harmful and at best useless information that's coming your way. And then, but you can also, even if you're getting information, do a little more active checking in. Who is sending you this information? Is it relevant to me? Is it reputable? Do I need to be bothered by it? Can I just throw it away? And then looking at your own decisions and your own patterns and behaviors. Chances are you're doing a ton of great things for your kid. If you're looking for advice, it's probably because you want to do a good job raising your kid because you love them. And so that in and of itself means that you are doing a good job. So look at the things that you're doing well. You're loving your child, you're following expert guidance, you're doing the things that keep them healthy and safe. And then how can you make those even more, even stronger? How can you do the things that make you feel even more connected with your kid? It's always helpful to focus on the positives. And it helps for kids, for toddlers and tantrums and all of that. And it helps for parents too. So just a lot of reflection. And of course, if you're still anxious, seeking help makes a lot of sense. It's never wrong to look into mental health help and support when you feel like functioning is still not going well. But just some basic information curation and checking in, I think, can do wonders in making anxiety better.
That you mentioned seeking help. So that said, when should parents consider seeking help, and what kind of supports are available to them for managing parental anxiety? Anxiety. Where should they even begin to look?
So I think any time that you feel like your any anxiety is interfering with your functioning, is interfering with your maximum enjoyment and, really quality of life measures, I think therapy is a great option. I'm just a huge proponent of it. I think it's a sign of strength to seek that out. And so if you do have health insurance, that's often covered. If you can look through your insurance company, if you don't, there's online teletherapy, there's BetterHealth, and different talk therapies and different sites. So those are all wonderful resources. But I'm also a fan of just looking at your social supports in addition, kind of doing another check-in of who is making your anxiety better from a kind of mom, dad, parent support perspective, and who maybe isn't. So, for example, I have some friends who I would say escalate my anxiety and sort of are always worried about something or always, telling me, oh, did you see this study? Did you see this? Did you see, are you worried about this for your kid? And those are friends that maybe I'm engaging with a little bit less as I sort of navigate this and higher levels of anxiety. And then there are people who are really a little more chill, honestly. And I think that can be really helpful, whether it's a mom group, like a new parent support group. There are a lot of postpartum groups. There's also toddler groups. Sometimes they're even mediated by social workers and therapists. So there's really a lot of good resources out there. I'll try to link to some of them online. I try to share their content on my Instagram, and your OB or pediatrician should also be able to help you getting connected with that as well.
I love that you mentioned all of the different support groups that are available, because I feel like there's more and more that are starting to pop up, especially with mom groups, but they really are like a great space for moms to connect with other moms and to be able to talk about some of the things that they're dealing with their little ones, and to essentially like normalize it so that you're not always comparing your situation with one other friend's situation.
Right. Absolutely.
So my last question, any other tips, suggestions, or recommendations?
Well, I just want to remind parents, if you're listening to this and you're struggling with anxiety, or you're just every day having stress being a parent, it really is normal, but it can be improved. It really can be improved. There are things we can do to make parenting more joyful, more reasonable, better than it is. It's really become needlessly stressful. It truly has. And there's a lot of reasons that, we just went through about why that's the case, but so much of it comes from this information overload. So, whether you're checking out my books on Instagram or you're finding someone else who really resonates with you, as long as they are scientific and evidence-based and are giving you good advice that you can follow, then I'm delighted about that. But if you're having anything that isn't evidence-based or is just unrealistic or is adding to the noise, do yourself a favor, just unfollow, block that. Nobody needs that. We don't have time for that. And just take some of that clutter, some of that stress out of your head, because then that's what's going to let that inner parenting voice really come to the surface, and your kid will love it. Your kid will love having a confident, connected parent. And I absolutely know that you can be that parent.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate you sharing all of your knowledge. I'll have all of your information linked in the show notes. So if anyone wants to get in touch with you or get a link to your books, they'll be able to do so from there.
Thank you so much for having me on. And thanks everyone for listening.
Thank you for listening. Tune in next week for our next episode. You can find us on Instagram for more updates and tips. Be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts and give us a review if you like us.